Crimea. What is the Crimean region and why is it so important? Why is it in the news today and why are people fighting over it? Hey, thanks for joining me, the Desperate Historian, to talk about history for a little bit. A lot of our elected officials, our policymakers, our diplomats, I'm not sure they know a lot about a foreign nation or another part of the world. And quite frankly, I don't want to hear anyone else's opinion about the topic unless they can find it on a map. So today I thought we'd talk about the Crimean. This has been one of the reasons that Russia invaded Ukraine, and there's been this fighting between Russia and Ukraine, and one of the sticking points over a potential peace settlement. But it's important to know the history of the region. It's important to know the history of Crimea. Crimea is a region of southern Ukraine on the Black Sea, and it's roughly 10,000 square miles, about the same size as the state of Maryland. It's got about 2.5 million people living there, which is a little larger than the United States state of New Mexico. So that gives you an idea of the size of the region. The largest city is Sevastopol, and it's got a population of about 500,000 people. It's a major port on the Black Sea. The region, Crimea, has been internationally recognized by most countries as part of Ukraine, but as I said, it was invaded and seized by Russia in 2014. And it's part of the negotiations in this ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. It's important for us to realize that while territories are often taken, exchanged, or relinquished during wars, these are not just land swaps. This is not just geography. This is not just territory or real estate. There are people who live there, over 2 million people in the case of Crimea. And they have with them their homes, their churches, their synagogues, their schools, their farms, their jobs. It's not just a land swap. So we've got to keep that in mind when we talk about these negotiations for territory. This to me has been kind of a theme in American history is that we get involved in international affairs or wars, or sometimes we're involved in a war itself, and we don't really understand a foreign country, whether it's Afghanistan or Vietnam. We get involved in some of the territory, some of the country, and we don't really understand what's going on in those countries. So it's important for us to have a kind of a base of knowledge when we get involved in international affairs. Although relatively small, Crimea has been an important part of world history for a long time due to its geography. It's the intersection between the classical world of the Greeks and then later the Romans, and it's on a border between the Russian steppes of Eastern Europe and then further east of that into Asia. So a lot of times it's seen as a dividing line between the West and the East, the Mediterranean world, and Russia, and then further east, Asia. It's also a strategic position, and that's why it's been fought over so many times throughout the centuries. You've seen so many empires and so many countries that have fought wars there. This goes back to the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantine Empire, the Ottomans, the Russians, the British, later the French, uh, Nazi Germany, and later the Soviet Union. The Crimean economy features agriculture, fishing, natural gas, of course, shipping due to its many ports. So it's an economic center as well. Russia has long coveted the Crimean region because it gives Russia access to a warm water port. And this has been a big deal for Russia and the Soviet Union, is that Russia does not have a lot of warm water ports. Over the winter, their ports freeze up, and it's difficult to get a lot of shipping in and out of Russia. So control of Crimea gives Russia control of the Black Sea and an outlet to the Mediterranean an outlet to the Atlantic. So it gives Russia a warm water port, and that's why Russia has always had a vested interest into the affairs of Crimea. Because of its location, it's also the intersection of many different peoples of different cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, including Catholics, people of the Eastern Orthodox faith, and Muslim. And these different ethnic and religious backgrounds and differences can also lead to wars and conflict. Crimea was colonized by the Greeks, later the Romans, successor states controlled by the Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire for almost 1,000 years. In the 1200s, Portions fell to the Mongols, while other parts were controlled by the Italian city-states, which were extremely prosperous. Mongols are often overlooked in world history, which is too bad. The Mongol Empire is fascinating. It's massive, and the Mongol Empire caused fear in the hearts of many people throughout Asia and into Europe. They were very, very powerful militarily and controlled huge portions of the planet Earth for long periods of time, and they were known for their military effectiveness. So, Mongol Empire, a great topic to study more about. After the Mongols, the area was then controlled by the Ottoman Empire until 1783, when Russia, led by Catherine the Great, defeated the Ottoman Empire and seized control of the region. From 1853 to 1856, the area was the scene of a major conflict between some of the world's most powerful empires. In a short but deadly conflict, Russia and Greece fought against a combined alliance of the French, the English, and the Ottoman Empire in a war known as the Crimean War. The Crimean War cost a lot of lives. Over 615,000 people were thought to have died during the war, mainly from disease, that's been the trend throughout most of human history. For most wars, until you get into the 20th century, most people died due to disease or to famine. But the Crimean War cost lives of over 600,000 people. It's a really high death toll, especially considering that the war only lasted less than 3 years. And the horrors of this war foreshadows the horrors of the American Civil War, which takes place in the 1860s, and later on the Great War, World War I. The causes of the Crimean War are complex. European powers, there were different political, strategic, economic competition in the region, in the Crimean region, as the Ottoman Empire continued its slow slide into weakness and then eventually collapse. The Ottoman Empire is often known as the quote unquote sick man of Europe, but that title's been thrown around a lot. Um, and then Russia had increased imperial ambitions at this time in different parts of the Crimean region. And so Russia was becoming kind of an aspirational colonial power in the 1850s. And there were disagreements between France and Russia also over the religious rights of Catholics and people of the Eastern Orthodox faith, who were both minorities in the Palestine region. So this is the reason that you had the Crimean War break out in the 1850s. Russia was led by Tsar Nicholas I and then later Alexander II. The Ottomans were led by Abdul Mecid I. France was under the leadership of Napoleon III, who's a fascinating and bizarre figure in world history. I encourage you to read more about Napoleon III. Britain was controlled by the Prime Minister George Gordon Hamilton and later Lord Palmerston. And of course, the regent at that time was Queen Victoria. The Crimean War was one of the first conflicts in which military forces used some of the more modern technologies, such as explosive naval shells, railways, and telegraphs, really transforming the nature of modern war. And we're seeing war on the scale of and the Industrial Revolution now. And again, this is a foreshadowing some of the horrors that will be the American Civil War and World War One. The Crimean War was also the first war to be widely photographed, and so it's the first war where we have a lot of photographic images from. And these images also go back home and sort of communicate the horrors of war to the populations at home. So we also have an interesting record from that war that's unique. The war was also known, as I said, a lot of the deaths were due to disease, malnutrition, and soldiers not having enough provisions or the correct gear. So there was a lot of focus now on logistics in war and how important those were, as well as some of the logistical failures and how that led to starvation and not enough supplies and soldiers freezing to death. And so a lot of the attention was to tactical failures, logistical failures, and local logistical mismanagement. The war really gave a rise to new attention to those things. And the war also it was the first time you really saw a more professionalized or a call for a more professionalized medical care in militaries. Russia ultimately lost the Crimean War, suing for peace, but the English and the French were happy to end the war. The war had proved dispopular or unpopular at home, and so they were happy to end the conflict. Um, the war shows, the Crimean War shows that there's a continued weakness and a decline of the Russian Empire that would ultimately collapse during World War One. Crimea was also the scene of bloody fighting during the Red and White forces, the Reds being the Bolsheviks, the Whites being the forces loyal to the Tsar, during the Russian Civil War from 1917 to 1921. This is after World War One. Many loyalists used the Crimean region as an escape route out of Russia to Istanbul to Turkey, but as many as 150,000 of them were killed in their efforts when they were trying to escape. The Crimea was also the scene of deadly fighting during World War II. It was occupied by Nazi Germany and was the location of the historic Yalta Conference in 1945 between Churchill, FDR, and Stalin that was really trying to set up what the future of the world would look like after World War II. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, an autonomous Republic of Crimea was set up as an administrative subset or subregion of Ukraine. But then in 2014, under Vladimir Putin, Russia invaded the Crimea and seized part of that, which has been part of Russia since then. Well, that's a little more information for you about this region in Crimea, why it's being fought over, why it's important, all the fighting that's been taking place in Crimea over the centuries, and probably why we're going to see more about it in the future as there are negotiations for hopefully to an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But it is a vital region to Ukraine, and I don't see them wanting to give it up. Hey, do me a favor. Hopefully, you got something out of this conversation today. Do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time on The Desperate Historian.